Okay, now that the Origin period is over and State of Origin has been concluded, let's have a quick look at the NRL standings after round 20. This is always a good time to look at the NRL ladder and see where teams are going, who's trending in the right direction, who's trending in the wrong direction, and what kind of teams have surprised us being either better than expected or worse than expected. One thing that I've taken out of this is the points differential between the team that's top right now and the team that's bottom is 22 points. That differential is the same as the team that's in 10th with the points that they've earned. So that's quite stunning. There's also a lot of congestion. It's very close this year. Very, very close. Between 4th and 13th, 6 points covers that entire number of teams. And there's a few teams on the edge of that who could still make the top 8. So it's a very, very tight season this season. There's a lot of teams on 24 points. There's a lot of teams on 20 points. So it is very, very tight to make the top 8. There is a lot of congestion. It shows how balanced the league actually is and how competitive the league is, and shows, ironically, the salary cap potentially working. And I have done videos before on the NRL salary cap and how I believe it is flawed. But there is one team that's definitely got separation and a couple other teams that are sort of chasing down the top team and are sort of starting to separate themselves from the complete and utter cluster of teams with only a handful of points between them. But without any further ado, let's go from 17th to 1st. 17th, West Tigers. 18 games played, so they've had 2 byes. Minus 217 on the points differential. Their defence is killing them. They've got 12 points. No one expected the West Tigers to make the top 8, but there was expected to be improvement. There hasn't been much improvement from last season. So Benji Marshall, first full season in coaching. It's been a tough introduction to full-time head coaching for Benji Marshall. Looks like Robbie Farah is going to be on his way out as an assistant, so there's going to be some coaching changes up in the box for the West Tigers. As I say, expected to be better. Maybe, let's say, about 11th, 12th, potentially, edging up the ladder. They're not. They're still bottom. Although teams above them are struggling as well, but they're looking very likely that they could get tailed off. But in 16th place, and a very big surprise this season, having already sacked their coach earlier on in the season, is the Parramatta Eels. They've played 17 games. They've got a minus 153 points differential, 14 points. They are also starting to get tailed off from the rest of the NRL ladder. They were not expected to be this bad. They were expected to be on the edge of the 8, potentially, maybe bounce back after a slightly disappointing season last season. The wheels have fallen off for the Parramatta Eels. Now Mitch Moses is out injured yet again. Their season's done. They're in a battle to avoid the wooden spoon at this point. Very disappointing the Eels have been this season. Their defence just has not been good enough. They've fallen apart from where they were 2 years ago, and even at points last year to where they are now. They have fallen off a cliff. You could talk about recruitment, injuries. Was it right time to giving Brad Arthur the contract extension, sacking Brad Arthur? There's a whole host of issues with the Eels that could be debated, but were not expected to be this bad. 15th, and losing badly today to the Sea Eagles, is the Titans. They've played 17 games in 20 rounds, minus 89 points. So their defence is significantly better than the teams below them. They had 18 points overall. They actually won 3 games in a row. The Titans also, there was expected to be some improvement. They weren't expected to be in the 8 necessarily. Des Hasler has started to turn things around with some tweaks to the lineup, and results have been improving. They've pulled away from the Eels and the Tigers, but were expected to be slightly better, but they weren't expected to make the 8. They have been entertaining to watch at times this season, but that poor start to the season has done for them, losing 6 in a row. So once they went on a losing streak to start the season, it was going to be an uphill struggle to make the top 8. But there is signs of improvement at the Titans. And green shoots of growth. They've just come off a win streak, admittedly losing today, but there is signs of improvement with the Titans. Another team that's really surprised this season with where they are is the Warriors. They were 4th last year. They're 14th. They've dropped 10 places on the ladder from where they were last year. 18 games played, a minus 34 on the points differential, so there's a lot of close games there. 19 points in total. They were expected to be a lot better than this. Big surprise with the Warriors falling as far as they have. But again, they're in games, they're in close games, but there are some bad defeats in there as well. and those bad defeats start building up, and losing those close games, it starts building up. Significant surprise that they are as low as they are, considering where they were last year, really falling from below expectations. Could we see some lineup changes and some coaching changes potentially in the box? We could see that the Warriors, again, they're not completely out of the hunt for the top 8. They're only 5 points off 8th place, but it's that points differential that's going to hold them back. If they can get on a run, however, they can start turning things around if that points differential goes in their favour. Their points differential isn't actually that bad compared to other teams around them, so we'll see. And they're in games, so it's not as if they're losing badly all the time. All they've got to do is win a few games, and suddenly their season transforms and they can jump up the ladder. The Knights are 13th, 18 games played, minus 97 on 20 points. The Knights, so inconsistent, fluctuating all over the place in recent seasons, where they finish in the 8, outside the 8, but below expectations. Below expectations, a lot was expected of this team. They have slipped down. They're on 20 points along with 2 other sides, but their points differential could really hurt them come the end of the season, because it is that tight to make the top 8. Just above them is the Rabbitohs in 12th, 17 games played, minus 90, so their points differential has improved from when I did that video looking at how bad their start to the season was. They've got 20 points now, but those early losses, that hideous start to the season, that poor form they had. Yes, their form has improved since Jason Demetriou was sacked, but that poor start to the season and that negative points differential is going to hurt them in the chase for the top 8. Should they potentially go on another win streak, there are teams above them that have far better points differentials, and they are playing catch-up. They are playing catch-up with the teams around them. Their points differential is not great. It is better than the Knights, but not much better than the Knights. One bad defeat and the Knights getting a good win. The roles are reversed. The Broncos, they're in 11th. Again, real surprise where they are. Injuries have hampered them this season. They also did lose the opening game in Vegas, and there was some concerns coming out of that Vegas weekend about some issues that the team had there. They played 18 games. They've got a positive 25 points differential, 20 points. So they lead the teams on 20 points, those 3 teams. That positive points differential could go in their favour. They are getting players back. If they go on a little bit of a win streak, their positive points differential will help them, as there are teams above them with worse defences. So the Raiders, for example, who I would say are pretty much bang average and expected to where they were meant to be, a bit of a decline. Team in transition. The Raiders are 10th, and I follow the Raiders. 17 games played, a minus 91. So defence is still an issue for the Raiders. 22 points they've acquired. So yes, that points differential being in a negative does hurt them. Should the Broncos win their next game, for example, or the Bunnies win their next game, for example, and the Raiders don't, that negative points differential is going to be a problem. They are a team in transition. They're about where they expected to be and where a lot of people expected them to be. About average. Just around the bottom of the top 8. At the top of the bottom 8. In the middle. About par. They're about average. And they're 12 points off first place. They're 10 points off the bottom. They're, as I say, about average, bang in the middle. A good surprise and a positive surprise from where they were last year is the Dragons in 9th. They've played 17 games, a minus 56 points differential, 24 points they've banked. However, that minus points differential means that they're outside the top 8 compared to the teams above them, who have got far superior points differentials. So some of those heavy defeats the Dragons have had have hurt them. With that negative points differential. They're also the last team with a negative points differential we're going to look at. All the other teams above them have positive points differentials, so are better in attack than defence. They've got better attacks and they also defend better. The Dragons have been much improved, and could you put that down to the coaching change? Could you put that down to some recruitment changes and roster changes? I think they're exceeding expectations. Some people thought they would struggle. Shane Flanagan does have a tough job. A lot of people thought they would struggle a little bit more. They've been very competitive, but some bad defeats in there have hurt their points differential. 8th place with a narrow win today is the Cowboys. They played 18 games. They've got a +3 differential when it comes to points. They've just broke even, 24 points, and that points differential has kept them in the top 8. very inconsistent. They're in games, they're not in games. Good wins, bad defeats. Good win at home today, as I'm recording this video, against the Bulldogs. We haven't got to the Bulldogs yet, so they're a big surprise this season. But they would want to. They've got the squad and the ability to be in the top 8 and potentially higher up in the top 8. Now, their points differential is not as good as the teams above them, but it is a positive points differential, which means the Dragons are in 9th. So as you can see, it's a very, very tight battle to make the top 8. It will come down to points differential. There will have to be tiebreakers between teams if points differential is the same, like head to head, for example. So the Cowboys in the top 8 at the moment, but they had a tough season last season to replicate the season before. There's a lot expected of this team, but they're in the top 8 at the moment and trending in the right direction. 7th, Dolphins. They play 17 games, got a 46 positive points differential, 24 points. Narrow loss to the Panthers today in Golden Point. But they're doing better than last season, so that's an improvement. They did fall away last season during the Origin period, rapidly last season. They did fall away in the second half of the season last year. They're still in the top 8, so I think they're slightly exceeding expectations, but they've strengthened that squad over the last 12 months from where they were to where they are. And a very good sign that they've got a positive points differential, and they're in games. And their positive points differential keeps them above the Cowboys. But because of that positive points differential, I think they could potentially linger at the bottom end of the top 8. But I think there's still the potential for Wayne Bennett to get them on a run, and then with that positive points differential, they can look up the ladder. But a pleasant surprise to see the Dolphins still in contention. 6th, Bulldogs. This is the big surprise for me of the season in a positive way. I think they've exceeded expectations, but the improvement and the green shoots were there last season at times. Recruitment's been really, really good, and Cameron Ciraldo has come into his own as a head coach. Narrow loss today to the Cowboys, but they've played 17 games. They've got a positive 63 points differential, 24 points, and it's by virtue of some of their really good wins and good defence that they've been climbing up the ladder quite steadily. They've been doing quite well, and they are trending in the right direction. There's nothing to say that they can't make the top 4 at this point, but the points differential, they're going to need some big wins to swing in their favour, and teams around them to have some heavy losses, so that points differential goes in their favour. But they are chasing down the top 4, and they have been a pleasant surprise this season. They've been better than advertised, and they've done better than expected. A lot of people felt they would still be in the bottom half of the table, but with some improvement, they've exceeded expectations. The Sea Eagles at 5th, they've played 18 games, a positive 97 points differential, 25 points. Big win today helps with that points differential. They've been a bit up and down this season, the Sea Eagles. They're still in 5th. Obviously, had that start to the season in the opening game at Vegas. The showstopper, played very well in that game. They've had a bit of an inconsistent season at times. The fact they are still 5th, I think, is a bit of a surprise. They're on the edge of the top 4. They've got the pieces there. They've got the talent there. It's all about getting consistency and making sure players stay fit. But they are, I think, trending in the right direction as well. They can be a bit frustrating at times, can the Sea Eagles? They can throw up some poor games that are frustrating. But again, another team trending in the right direction, staying competitive. And Anthony Seibold, I think, has rebuilt his coaching reputation after the Broncos debacle a couple of years ago. 4th place, the Roosters. They played 18 games. They've got the best points differential of 209. This is a team that can score a lot of points. They've got 26 points, so they're still 8 points off top spot. They've had some defeats in there, but 209 points into the positive, which just shows how good they are attacking. But are they consistent enough? There has been questions about the Roosters' depth over the last couple of years, with several key players retiring. But they look like a dark horse to make the grand final at this point. There are still obviously a lot of games to play. But the Roosters, don't discount the Roosters for doing something towards the end of the season and going on a run to the grand final. Honestly, do not discount the Roosters to be a challenger to the Storm and the Panthers. They've got 26 points and a scary points differential. Their points differential dwarfs any other team in the competition. So if they were tied on points with teams in 2nd, 3rd or 1st, if it was to end up that way, that points differential is a Massive, massive jailbreaker for them. Third place is the Sharks. They played 17 games, a positive 125 points differential, so that's still ridiculous. 28 points. They've had some ups and downs this season. Nico Hines has had some ups and downs this season, but they're trending in the right direction now. They are starting to win against top 4 or top 8 rivals where they were struggling in previous seasons. Craig Fitzgibbon has finally got this side rolling a little bit. And they are doing rather well. And don't discount the Sharks from going on a finals run either. They've had their moments against some big opposition like the Storm, the Roosters, Panthers. They've played all 3 of them, winning 2, losing 1. They're starting, to trend in the right direction now, the Sharks. And when their attack clicks, it's brilliant to watch. It really is. Second place, surprisingly, with 4 points off top spot, is the Panthers. They've played 17, 118 points differential positive, 30 points. There's a bit of a gap now. The Storm have been very, very consistent this season. Their first 17 games played, positive points differential of 141, 34 points. The Panthers, hey, they got Nathan Cleary back. They have had a lot of injuries and squad turnover that have hampered them. Yet they are still one of the top teams. Their depth has been tested, yet they're still one of the top teams. But they don't like playing in the rain, so if it rains, they tend to lose. That's quite very, very interesting. Their performances in wet weather conditions have not been great, and there's been a fair bit of rain on the east coast of Australia this season, so that could explain some of their defeats. That's something I've noticed over the last 4 or 5 years with the Panthers, is when it rains, they don't play as well. They can't play their controlling style, and they tend to lose in the rain. Both World Club challenges, they lost in the rain, so that's very interesting to note that. So the Storm are first, Panthers second. Obviously, the question with the Storm is how long is Craig Bellamy going to be head coach there, and what is the succession plan for when Craig Bellamy decides to call it a day as a head coach? That's the one area with the Storm is every season. How long is Craig Bellamy going to continue coaching at this level for? Panthers, Ivan Cleary. The system there that they've built is ridiculous, but I do find it surprising that the Storm are 4 points clear. Whether Craig Bellamy decides to rotate players, rest players, and going into the finals will be interesting. Panthers, they're still looking pretty good. They're still, when they are up against it, not playing well, they can still grind out wins. The Sharks have, as I say, massively improved and become more consistent. The Roosters, their attack is scary. They're starting to click now. But then some of the surprises like the Eels, the Warriors, the Knights, the Broncos, the Bunnies, the really disappointing. Some teams that were expected to be in and around the top 8 have fallen off. It is very congested. You could throw a blanket over 2/3 of the league. And some teams are going to miss out, but some teams have some really bad defensive records. The Bunnies, for example, are feeling it after their really shocking start to the season. Yes, their form has improved and the performances have improved. They're playing catch-up. And that's hard to do when other teams have had far more consistent starts, far better starts, and are better defensively. The Knights, poor again. How long will O'Brien be head coach there? Broncos, Kevin Walters, the pressure's starting to come a little bit for Kevin Walters. They have had a lot of injuries. Potentially they can turn it around. Raiders, team in transition, about average. I would say the Raiders is the average mark for the league, to be honest. And again, their points differential, they're not good enough defensively, losing too many close games. But the Tigers and the Eels have been absolute tyre fires this season. Tigers, nothing changes there, but the Eels, they've fallen off a cliff the last season and a half. From where they were in a grand final to where they are now, trying to battle to avoid the wooden spoon. That is quite surprising. But there we go. There's a quick look at the NRL season standings after 20 rounds. Place your thoughts on where your team is at in the standings, and do you think we're going to see massive change in the last few rounds of the season? Will we see some momentum swings? Will we see teams turn their performances around? Will we see teams continue to slide? And there we go. Thank you very much for watching. Place your thoughts in the comments section below, and I'll have some more content for you guys very, very soon.